Good evening, everyone. Treasure Troller here from the militant state of Michigan. So I just wanted a couple of things tonight. One is sort of on the topic that everyone seems to want to talk about, with just a couple of things that no one's talked about concerning Caitlin Clark. But right now, I hope this comes in. I hope that you'll be able to see this sign. To me, this is the most confusing sign I have ever seen in my life. So there's no parking, there's no turning around, and there's no turning left. But the road curves up here, so you can't go straight. It's confusing to me. So with Caitlin Clark, there's two things I've not heard talked about. The first thing, which is sort of past where you actually couldn't talk about it, but you never heard anybody talking about how they like to trade up and try to pick Caitlin. A little bit of a bumpy road here. But no one ever talked about trading up to take Caitlin Clark. And now you don't hear anyone saying, "Jays, we wish we would have traded up to get Caitlin Clark." No one talks about how they made a mistake in not trying to acquire Caitlin Clark. The other thing that I've noticed with her, and it sort of reminds me of back in 2016 when Obama was talking about "you didn't do that" or "you didn't build that," when he was referring to people building factories, but if it wasn't for government building the roads and the infrastructure, well, then you wouldn't have been successful, kind of thing. So it's really government. And I just sort of feel like the or the WNBA is sort of turned on Caitlin by saying, "Well, you didn't do it, we did it." But actually it was the NBA that did it, because they've been funding that league now for 30 years. It's never made any money. And to me, the NBA has been waiting for someone like Caitlin Clark to come along and boost its ratings and boost its revenue and boost the attendance and take the game to the next level. Unfortunately, it was from a white heterosexual female that did it. And that was something that, well, something they hadn't planned on. So the next thing is, so my only one commenter in my alone logs, I appreciated this last comment. The other ones are usually about different types of equipment and stuff. This last one had something to do actually with the vlog, about how he was trying to discredit my orphan factor as a reason for them to leave or not leave the game, or what would keep them from winning the game. You know, my contention is that the less things they have that they have to think about at home, especially family, the better off the contestant is. And he was making a point that of the past 10 seasons, 8 of them had family. I think we're talking a little bit about semantics, because he's talking about it, sort of the will or the skill to make it, to be successful. And by and large, they all do. They all have the skill. They all know how to make fire. They all can boil water. They all have shelters. They all get firewood. It comes down to different, for instance, if they all fish, but if they're not really good at fishing, they take a net. They take a small gill net. Now, Some may say, well, it's better to make your own, or to, I don't know, he talked about taking a hammock and using the hammock. There may be better ways or more efficient ways, but the gill net's it. They're some of the most experienced archers I've ever seen. I mean, especially with a recurve bow. So a lot of them have that skill. Probably of the 10, 8 of them are, they all know how to set snare traps. Probably of the 10, 8 of them are very good at it. And the other 2 know what they're doing, but it's just not something they do on a regular basis. So as far as skill goes, other than the luck box big game kill, they all have the same skills. I mean, and they're all willing to eat stuff I would never eat. Just finding a lone liver on the beach. So here's a squirrel liver. I mean, no fur around it, no bones, no head, no tail, no nothing. Just a liver, and they're willing to start a fire and eat that thing? No, I'm not going to do that. So they are willing to do things. As far as being there, they all have the skills that it takes to be there. Now, it comes down to a starvation contest. It comes down to the 4-corner starve. It always has. But I think the reason why, and if you look back and see why they tapped out, a lot of them are tapping out because of family. It's just a fact. So my orphan factor stands firm. They have too much time to think about stuff. And they start thinking about home and what they're missing and not keeping their eye on the prize. So I think that's about it tonight. Now, that whole Caitlin Clark thing got me started because I've been watching a show on HBO. I've been watching that House of the Dragons. And maybe it's not quite as good as Game of Thrones. There's not as many characters. I think that's the biggest thing. So they have to kind of stick with the same storylines continuously, and I think that's kind of what makes the show a little less interesting. Because, you know, you kind of get in the middle of a heavy plot on Game of Thrones, and you can go show the brother and sister, humping in the castle tower. This one is kind of straightforward, and I think that's a little bit why it's not as good, but it still is a good show. But he was trying to relate the House of Dragons with the Caitlin Clark saga and putting these people in the Targaryen house, and I can't think of what the other one is, but it was just crazy. If you don't watch the shows, you have no idea what he's talking about. I guess the only thing that really relates well, and I don't know which one, but would be the WNBA team that thought when they drafted someone they were getting a dragon, and then they found out they got a pig. So that would, to me, would be the only real direct relationship. So, but other than that, I think it's sort of a game of semantics. It comes down a lot to just winning the starvation contest. They all have the skills. I mean, none of my alone, I can't say that, but probably 95% of the alone vlogs, none of them really are based on how they don't have the skill to do something. I don't think. Once in a while, maybe they try to make something that fails, but they're just mostly about the the armchair quarterbacking. So I'm just waiting to hear someone say, you know, so-and-so really should have tried to draft Caitlin Clark, or someone come out and say, boy, we wish we would have made an attempt to trade up for Caitlin Clark. I'd really like to hear that conversation. So, with that, this is Treasure Troller saying aloha and good night.